Hello, and welcome to this little podcast video I've decided to make for our second assignment because I am just a girl who loves to talk. Before we begin, I would like to tell a bit of a story. It was around 2012 and I had just watched the 1998 movie The Parent Trap with my sister. The movie follows two young twins who reunite their birth parents after getting rid of their evil, vain stepmother. At the time, I had a friend whose parents were divorced, and he was talking about a new woman that had entered his father's life, a potential stepmother. Naturally, my brain started to create these weird scenarios, and I guess it got me thinking, is she going to be wicked? I mean, all I had known of stepmothers were the portrayals that I had seen on movies and TV shows and in the stories that I read. But let's go back for a second. Who is the wicked stepmother, and what does she really represent? The wicked stepmother is often found in fairy tales and stories made for children. Authors like the Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen have used this trope before in their most popular stories, like Cinderella, the evil queen in Snow White, the wicked witch in Rapunzel, and the stepmother in Hansel and Gretel. She is often the main antagonist and serves as a direct opposite to our protagonist, usually the princess. Where the princess is beautiful and young, the wicked stepmother is ugly and old. Although age is not always a contender for the stepmother's wickedness, jealousy always is. Jealousy of her beauty, jealousy of the love that her father has for his daughter. Jealousy for her age and her naivete. The list goes on and on. When asked about the choice to write about stepmothers instead of biological ones, Wilhelm Grimm spoke about the fact that he and his brother had become very aware of the gruesome nature of their stories, and so they decided to write a stepmother role, disconnecting them biologically from the child and the victim in these stories. I guess this makes me wonder whether or not society would treat women differently if this stepmother trope hadn't been written. What if the evil queen in Snow White was her biological mother and she tried to have her killed? Would we have the same perspectives of stepmothers versus real mothers in stories? This character's lack of beauty is often connected to something unnatural and magical and evil. In Snow White, for example, the evil queen is characterized with the word godless, a reflection of the heavy anti-Christian narrative of the early 19th century. In researching this topic, I found that often a lot of these characters were connected to something evil and witchy, which is still upheld in a lot of society's values today. To veer away from the wicked stepmother for a moment, I would like to talk about witches. If you're on the internet at all right now, you might have seen promotion for the new movie Wicked, which is a movie musical based on the 2003 musical of the same name. The movie is about the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. This reclamation of stories about witches is a trend that I find to be very interesting, especially when compared to stories of witches past. If you're unaware, women of past centuries who were thought to be evil, or witches, were burned at the stake. Most notably, in 1692, in a colonial village of Massachusetts called Salem, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft in some form, and this was thus dubbed the Salem Witch Trials. 19 people were executed, 14 of which were women. About 78% of people who were accused of any of these crimes were in fact women, due to the belief that women were more sinful and a vessel for Satan. Interestingly, some of the most famous movies and TV shows of the last few decades are about witchcraft and wizardry, like Marvel, the American Horror Story, or the Harry Potter series, which is the third highest grossing movie series of all time. So why is this trope so heavily associated with witchcraft and witches? I mean, if you had to draw a Venn diagram of the traits of the wicked stepmother and the wicked witch, it would just be one circle. I mean, they both hate children, they're both ugly, and if they're beautiful, they only use it to manipulate men. Both characters are perversions of what we see women as, nurturing and kind, turning that on its back and creating these evil characters that we cannot associate with women of today. For some reason, one of my favorite stories growing up was that of Rumpelstiltskin, which I'm aware is not a very common choice for a lot of young girls. But I think the reason why I used to like him so much is, well, I think I definitely got him mixed up with that of Rapunzel, so I think I bought the book expecting that I would read about a beautiful princess with long blonde hair, and instead I was reading about this evil wizard. I think also a reason why I love him so much is the version of him in Shrek, like that tiny little ginger man. I think he's so Just so funny, yeah. But anyways, the reason I bring up Rumpelstiltskin is because I think he's one of the only male characters that uses witchcraft and is dubbed evil. Most wizards in any children's tales are seen and held in high regard, while the witches are not really treated well by society. The witch is wicked and cruel. The wizard represents good morals. While the wizard doesn't seem to age and is considered a timeless beauty, the witch is ugly. Is it beginning to make a bit of sense now? While men age like a fine wine or a silver box as they grow up. Women stop growing up when they turn 35, this biological clock forbidding them from being youthful. Oh, I see now. It's misogyny! Of course this is expected with stories of such past times. I mean, women were only given the right to vote in the last few 2 centuries. Interestingly, a small part of Sweden allowing women to vote in 1718, although they had to be tax-paying. Norway awarded women with the right to vote in 1913 and Malta in 1947. So it's clear that we still have a lot of catching up to do. When discussing fairy tales, we often talk about oral storytelling or this passing down of stories through history. In my opinion, I don't think that's really so trendy these days because children aren't being read stories the way they used to be. With the current economic recession in sight, parents have to work more than one job to keep their houses and have food on the table. And children simply aren't being fed the same stories that they used to be. Nowadays, if a child knows about a fairy tale, they probably saw it from the Disney commodified version in a movie or a TV show. It is no secret that children these days are much less imaginative than those of previous generations. With social media and the rapid growing use of AI technology, children have less and less creative spaces, making them less creative themselves. We live in an age of distraction where content and media are plentiful, with more than 500 hours of content being uploaded to YouTube alone every minute. Media for children and young teenagers is much more heavily dependent on optimism that we seem to feed them in times like these. So the need for these original fairy tales has decreased because the Disney commodified versions are the happy, cheerful ones, where the princess always wins and she gets her man, and the wicked, evil witch is defeated. But this isn't true. Take a look at The Little Mermaid, for example. In the Disney version, she ends up with the prince, married, and then eventually she has a child in the sequel. But in the Hans Christian Andersen version, she dies. She sacrifices herself for a man, and simply turns into sea foam, looking over him from the sky. Are children of today privy to know this version of the story? No. In fact, I think if I had to go outside and ask children which fairy tale is their favorite, they would answer with a Disney princess. They would not give me Hansel and Gretel or Goldilocks and the Three Bears. They would tell me Snow White or Cinderella or Belle from Beauty and the Beast. It is widely accepted that children read fairy tales because it helps them understand the inner complexities of life and society. The wicked stepmother and all evil characters by extension are simply a vessel for children to project whatever evil they have in their own lives onto that character and learn how to deal with it. The wicked stepmother is nothing but a cautionary tale to us, the readers, that vanity and jealousy can turn us into something that we do not want. But also telling a young child who may have abusive parents that once they defeat this wicked stepmother, they will find happiness, they will live happily ever after. Overcoming evil is something that is very important in children's fairy tales. And so, dear viewer, I leave you with this. A reminder. A reminder that these stories written so many years ago are not meant to be taken so literally. Media with this wicked stepmother trope will always be written. And in my opinion, if written well, it can actually be a very compelling story. But a lot of it is rooted in the misogyny that we have carried on for so many years. It is important that we as adults, when we read these stories to children, we should understand that they should not be taken from an adult point of view, but we should rather be a child and understand what it is like to overcome evil with our own cunning and bravery. Thank you and goodbye.